Jaenga, welcome to the Underground Society podcast, man.
Thanks for having me. There's a line that just came in my head before we hopped on here, which was minimize your deathbed regrets. I always felt that I was at the mercy of the gatekeepers of this world.
You used to travel around with your bus and play afters at campgrounds, right?
If I'm to put this all in a timeline, I grew up watching films. I decided I want to be a guitarist in a band and moved back to New York, joined a band, decided it wasn't for me, got into EDM music. I bought a school bus, turned it into a stage. The town is giving me tickets constantly because it's not supposed to be parked on the street. I still don't even have a fucking license to drive it. I felt like a pirate a lot of the time because the whole inside was made of oak. It feels like a ship, and I'm driving it across the country, which felt like the fucking ocean. I'm thinking to myself, what if I turn into like a guy that's in his late 30s, still talking about the good old days when he partied in a school bus? And what exactly is the mission? What is the vision? All I know is I was crazy enough and delusional enough to just say, fuck it.
Jaenga, welcome to the Underground Society podcast, man. How are you?
What's up, Justin? Good, man. Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. So before we get actually into me asking you some serious questions, I just wanted to say thank you for being here because I have been a fan of your music all the way back. I want to say I'm pronouncing this right, but Toulambi Tribe, when you released that back in 2018, I've been a fan of your music all the way back then. So I remember here, I was listening to a playlist on, I think it was just a Spotify, maybe Zed's Dead's playlist or something, because I know that was released on Deadbeats. And yeah, I heard the song and I was showing all my friends. It was like the first song. I was like, who's this Jaenga guy? Like, and I love your name. And so and then I had Charmaine on episode 7 back 3 years ago when I started this podcast. And I know you've done a lot of, you're good friends with her and stuff. So we were talking a little bit about you and I was telling her how much of a fan I was of you. So it's a pleasure to have you on the show. So thank you for being here.
Dude, I really do appreciate that, man. It's kind of wild thinking back because it feels like a lifetime ago. So for you to say that, I'm like, holy shit,
2018 does feel like a long time ago. Yeah.
It does, yeah. Pre-pandemic, like everything was cool and then we had no idea.
Yeah, right. How'd the pandemic, I know that's even been a while now as well, because it's been almost 3 years ago, but how'd the pandemic time kind of go for you?
It was great.
Good.
I actually really enjoyed it. I was able to relax a bit. Well, I mean, I guess I'm slightly lying there because the beginning of it was horrifying because I had just gotten out of a surgery and I had one operating lung that I only had one lung that was working.
Oh shit! So you were definitely afraid of that. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So the doctors told me, they said there's this new thing called COVID. Don't get it because if you do that, you might not.
Yeah, you might
so
die.
Well.
Yeah.
Yeah, you might die. So I ended up driving across the states and then I just chilled in my school bus for a little bit and just didn't like talk to anybody. And then after that, it was amazing, man. I was just making music every day, kayaking. It was wonderful.
How did the talking a little bit about your surgery? How did that? Are you good and healed and everything kind of came out okay with that, or how did that end up? Now that we're so far past it.
Totally. Yeah, I'm all good, man. I mean, I could still feel my lung. It's my left lung.
What happened?
I had a thing called a spontaneous pneumothorax. I was running just before COVID in Portland, and dude, I'm going to get deep right off the bat here, man.
Go for it.
My dad
I got a lot of deep questions to follow that up, so we're going to get deep on this one.
Okay. My dad had just passed away, and I was working out like super fucking hard because it was the only thing I could do to take my mind off of it because he was like my best friend. And my dad was also like an Air Force guy. And, we grew up going to the gym together. And so it was a way that I was able to sort of like live in his honor. And I decided that I'm just going to become a fucking animal and I'm going to live in his honor. So I did. And so the day after I learned, I'm just like in the gym, just like fucking pushing myself to my utmost limit.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then that night I was running and my lung just collapsed. Like I pushed myself too hard, I guess. I'm not sure what happened. And went to the hospital. It's supposed to be super normal. It's supposed to be a thing where they just, suck the air out of your chest cavity and then they just wait and your lung fixes itself.
To heal. Yeah.
Right. But in my case, it didn't. So they put me in a surgery, which they called an experimental surgery. They didn't know what was going to happen. And they tried to fix it. They did temporarily. It recollapsed again. And then I had to go into like a much more serious surgery where they were like, we don't know if like you'll even make it out of this.
Dang.
And then, because they thought I was going to have what's called a tension pneumothorax, which means I go into cardiac arrest and pretty much die on the spot. And yeah, that surgery worked. So now I'm chilling.
Good. Yeah. I'm glad you're doing okay. I know, I'm definitely, as a fan of your music, I'm glad you're still here and putting out music. So, still living your dream. How did you kind of first get introduced into like the music industry and stuff like that? How did you kind of find that was what you were passionate about, and when did you begin chasing that career?
I was in a band when I was in high school, and I had always aspired to guitarists because I was a guitarist. So I was always looking up to like, you know, guys like Jimi Hendrix and Randy Rhoads. And so I was in a band, and I was skipping school to be in this band. And the band was like telling me like, hey kid, you're going to have to like drop out of school if you want to be in the band. I was like,
whoa.
I was all about it though. I was all about it. I was like, let's go. Like totally down. I wasn't doing really good in school anyways. I got distracted so easy. I just wanted to make films and make music. So yeah, one night, the thing was that rock and roll and metal, I was in a progressive metal band at that time. It was all dying. So I was playing these shows down in the city, and man, we were getting like 30 people to the shows, but that was huge in band culture at that time. It really was. Like, it's fucking crazy, man. Like, I was looking forward to going to New York for my entire life, like traveling around the world with my dad because he's in the Air Force. And then we got back, and I was like, finally, like I'm going to be in a rock band in New York, and it's going to be the sickest fucking thing. And dude, it was us. And I think the Dirty Pearls were like the biggest band in New York. And it was like very, very small numbers of people coming to the venues. And the reason that affected me, it was such a hurdle for me to get over, because the reason I got into music to begin with is because the culture was so important to me. And the culture wasn't there, man. Like I'm talking like we were just playing these like stale beer smelling bars, like, you know, 9-10 p.m. at night. We were playing battle the bands type thing. Promoters were getting us to buy into them. It was a pay to play type culture.
What the heck?
Everybody's just trying to make money off of each other.
It's the mooch fest.
The whole thing sucked, dude. So one night I went to Webster Hall, and Nero was playing. And the only reason I went in is because my friend Gerard was standing at the front. He was the GM, and he was just like, why don't you come in? And I was like, I'm good, man. I'm going home. And, you know, I just got band practice. And he's like, whatever, come in. I'll get you a drink. So I went in, and I had no idea what this sound was, but Nero was playing, this group called Nero. And the fucking bass was so heavy. The place was sold out. Kids were wearing like flowers. It was insane. Like just neon colors. And wow, it was almost like if you saw like a photo of like what Led Zeppelin was doing back in the day, but it was just like two guys on a stage with the CDJs. It just made sense. I was like, oh, I'm chasing ghosts, man. Like all the people that I look up to are like dead, you know,
Wrong
like
genre.
this is the current thing.
You went from guitar to obviously EDM. Did you have any crossover there for a while? Are you still playing guitar, or is that something that you incorporate into your production now?
I used to incorporate it in Jaenga, not on the recordings, not on like the records I was putting out, but I'd play guitar at the shows. So I would roll through with my school bus, and I would just like play a Renegade set as I always did. But I would just like, you know, I'd play a solo over like a Black Sabbath song or something. And it was just fun. You know, I was just having fun, man. You know,
that's what it should be at the end of the day. I think a lot of people get so caught up in like the serious, trying to make money, trying to make this a career, which obviously is important, but you got to make money if this is going to be your career. But they get so wrapped up in like the seriousness of it that sometimes people forget to like, it's supposed to be fun too. Like,
totally, man. Yeah. There's a line that just came in my head before we hopped on here, which was minimize your deathbed regrets.
Oh, there you go.
And I like want to make it into a poster or something.
Dude, I live my life that way 100%. Like if there's ever an opportunity to do anything, whether I'm scared of it, you know, facing fears, all that stuff, like there's been a lot of things I'm trying to think of an example, but there's been a lot of couple things recently where like I'm like, oh man, like I've never done that. I'm kind of like worried about doing it, and then like or even using this podcast for an example, I was so scared to sit down and do an interview, or like even like before this, like I got a little nervous just because I've been a fan of yours for so long, and it's just like putting yourself in uncomfortable situations. But like at the end, when my life is over, am I going to want to look back and, say, oh, I wish I would have done that? Or am I going to want to look back and be like, dude, I did everything I possibly could. I killed my life. Like, I want to be that person. So I 100% feel that.
Where do you think you are now, like on the scale of 1 to 10?
Of making everything happen?
Maybe not like accomplishing the dreams, because that's like an infinite journey, right. But like, where do you think you are now as like your commitment to minimizing your deathbed regrets?
Oh, 100%. There's things that I'm afraid of that because I'm afraid of it, I want to do it more.
Oh, so you're like 10 out of 10 right now. You just go and do it.
I go do it. Yeah.
Yo.
Yeah.
That's inspiring. That's so inspiring.
I love it. There's actually a One Republic song. I can't remember which song it is, but they talk about like that exact concept of just like, I did it all. Like that's how I want to live my life. I want to do it all. Like whether I'm scared of it, whether if I want to do it, whether I don't want to do it, it's like if I think that it's important to have that experience in life, I want to say that I've done it at least once.
That's really fucking cool, man. That's inspiring that you're like confident enough to do it, whether you think you're going to fail or not. Cause like the amount of emotions that go through anybody's head when they have to do something is like, well, pretty intense, because I think that's the reason 9 out of 10 people can't say what you just said, that I'm like 100% doing everything. What if it doesn't get even small, even like very marginal things like, oh, maybe it's not going to get enough likes. Are you really going to be on your deathbed? Like, I didn't post that photo because I was afraid of like, I might not get 100 likes. It's like, what the fuck?
Yeah,
dude, just post it. It's a fucking Instagram post.
Yeah, right. And that's not how it works anyways. Everyone has to go through that period of, as you're growing your following, everyone kind of goes through those phases. Like you got to put yourself out there. And which is crazy because like in high school and stuff, I used to get picked on a lot. And I used to be the exact opposite. I used to always think about what other people would think about me. And like, that was one of my big issues. And ever since this podcast is what changed my life a lot, was I don't care. I'm putting myself out there every week. I'm having conversations with people that I've never met before. And it's just, it's really taught me to like, just go for it, dude. And I'm so glad that, I'm choosing to do that, because I used to care so much about what people thought about me.
I think those early, I don't know if you call that a failure, but maybe like those early, very impressionable moments of hard times, I think those create stronger people. Like you are where you are now because you don't want to live in that place anymore.
I was miserable there. I didn't. As soon as I hit a certain age and I was like, why am I doing this? Like, I want to live for me. Disregard everyone else's. And I wanted to bring this up, but we'll bring it up now. I'm a Christian too. So, it's like the only one who can truly judge me is God.
That's
everyone
awesome,
else who
man.
lives on this earth, who gives a shit? So
that's really, really cool. Yeah, I think when you have a higher power, it makes everything seem like fucking nothing, man. You can make anything happen. And also, it is funny. I've been having a lot of conversations about spirituality recently.
I was going to ask you about that, so I'm glad we're bringing this up.
Sure. Dude, we're just fucking getting straight into this shit. But, it is funny. We put limitations on what we believe is actually possible. And when I talk to people, very close friends of mine, family members, other artists, when we talk about things like zoo theory, parallel universes, the idea of like maybe we're in a simulation, it's funny that those ideologies are accepted, and then more conventional sort of legacy ideologies like Christianity are not. And it doesn't make sense to me, because we're talking about something that, like, for instance, parallel universes or zoo theory, which is extremely theoretical.
What is zoo theory? I'm not sure what that is. Zoo theory.
Zoo theory is the idea that, we're being watched, like we're in a zoo, by aliens, and they aren't going to reveal themselves until the time is right, and, we've reached
yeah, dude, the alien thing's popping off right now, especially on like pop culture. Like they found aliens in like Mexico or whatever. They're fake, but it's been a hot topic in pop culture recently.
It has, yeah. And I read one article on it, and I was like, I don't know, this smells fishy. I'm just going to go back to making music.
If it's supposed to happen, it'll reveal itself even more. But as of right now, I'm just going to keep going about my life.
No doubt. But ultimately, I think keeping an open mind with, this sort of, legacy sort of faith like Christianity or even like simulation theory, everything has pros and cons. We don't have to believe every single thing of a certain faith or every single thing of a
even
theory.
I, like being a Christian, like that doesn't mean I agree with everything that the religion stands for either. Like I know like traditionally, most people are supposed to be a husband and wife. That's the traditional way of going about life. But like, I also have a lot of gay friends, especially in the industry. And like, I have like people who, don't believe in that. And it's like, who am I to cast judgment on them if that's the way they want to live their life? And me being a Christian, I love others how Jesus would have loved them too, regardless of their belief standpoints, whatever, however they choose to live their life.
Absolutely. Well, what I say a lot of the time is, people go, oh, well, I met somebody who's Christian and they were a bad person, or there's a story about a priest that whatever. I mean, there's a lot of
bad
stories.
apples everywhere.
Absolutely. I was going to say, well, a lot of those people aren't actually following their own scripture. The idea is just to follow the life of a guy named Jesus Christ. And I mean, if he was judging people, maybe that's not the best religion, but he wasn't judging people at all. Like, so if you're aspiring to just be a better person, I don't see anything wrong with that. And I think that humans are fallible. I think a lot of the rules and regulations around it are created by man. So it's up to us to sort of speculate with our own brain. Does that make sense? Does that not make sense?
Yeah.
It's, Absolutely. I don't think there's anything wrong with trying to aspire to be a better person at all. I think it's a phenomenal thing. I think it's a very good thing.
Absolutely. I agree. Yeah. And that's, I think, something relating it back to the EDM industry. It's definitely something that I take pride in, being in an industry that, like, being the light in the industry, I guess, and like trying to show or lead by example of how, not necessarily how to be a Christian, but how to just be a better person.
No doubt.
I wanted to ask you, going back to your story, since we kind of just went on a tangent there, music isn't the only thing that you're involved in entertainment. You're also a filmmaker. You also do a couple other things. Was music the first thing, though? Is that what first got you interested in like the entertainment side of things?
I got a guitar and I got a guitar and I found my dad's camera under his bed at the same time, pretty much.
Okay.
So since then, it's been
two worlds combined.
It's been two worlds combined.
Also skateboarding. I'm sure with filmmaking, that's a huge part of the culture for skateboarding too. I know you're a huge skateboarder, so.
Yeah, and skateboarding came first before those two things. But I've always been somewhat like attention deficit. I'm not actually ADD, but I've been. I could be. Who knows? But I've been. It's very hard for me to do one thing, so I have to do two things at the same time, pretty much all the time. I switch back and forth. It makes it a lot easier. Even when I'm making music, I'll write an EP all at the same time. I like switching between two different songs, 3 different songs, 4 different songs, and and they eventually end up sounding like an EP because they all share similar characteristics.
That's interesting. I was watching one of the interviews that you did with Taboo going into this, and you were talking a lot about like how like discipline is such like an important thing to you. How do you integrate your discipline with having ADD? How do those two things kind of both exist inside of you?
I had to get rid of my perfectionist traits.
I used to be very much that way too.
I read Matthew McConaughey's book.
So did I.
Somewhat recently. Yeah, did you like it?
Yeah, dude. So super good book.
It's a great book, right?
Yes.
Well, there's a line in there. What did he say? He said something along the lines of, it's better to pedal to the metal in one direction and stand in place. I forget what the quote was exactly, but something along those lines. And I found that perfectionism was keeping me in one place because I'm focusing on the same project and I'm not moving forward. So I decided, okay, the thing that really hit me, if I'm being honest, is I was 26 years old and I still had not put out an EP. It wasn't sad that I felt that way. I wasn't angry. I was beside myself. It was one of the most distraught feelings I've ever had because I had my entire life aspired to being a musician. I felt it was my calling on this earth. And I was 26, turning 27. And I felt, I guess, somewhat like a failure. It was like I hadn't even put out a fucking album yet. And some of the people that I was always kind of like using as my blueprint had died at the age of 27 and had put out multiple albums. and have done world tours. So it was crazy. It was like, wow, this is not good. So I ended up flying to Portland one night. I was in my studio, my film studio on the Upper East Side in Manhattan. And I was sleeping on the couch, as I always did, because I couldn't afford an apartment, but I could pay the rent for the studio. And I decided to call my brother and I said, hey man, I think I need to come out there and I think I need to get out of this mayhem. And I just went out there and did nothing besides hang out with my brother. And I made the Toulambi album.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
And that was actually an album, that was a 9-track album. But when Deadbeats picked it up, it got slimmed down to 4 tracks.
You've been writing music before that. You just hadn't built anything or created anything cohesive, or?
Yeah, I'd been making music since I was probably 16. I mean, I was always messing around with Fruity Loops, and I was messing around with my guitar, and I was getting tab books, like so you could like play a
sheet
Nirvana
music,
song.
right?
Yeah, sheet music,
yeah.
But the more simplified version. Instead of notes, they're numbers. And yeah, it felt like this. I think that phase of my life, I was breaking through the sort of gatekeeper mentality, which was like, I always felt that I was at the mercy of the gatekeepers of this world. So, and I'll explain that because it might come off a bit ambiguous, but it felt as if all the record labels that I wanted to release on, all the shows that I wanted to play, all the music that I wanted to write, the labels were held by gatekeepers. The shows, the festivals were held by gatekeepers. And the music that I wanted to write, I was gatekeeping. I was prohibiting myself from writing the album because I just kept thinking, well, I'm not at Jimi Hendrix's level yet. Why would I ever think that? Who am I to put out an album?
You're not Jimi Hendrix, though.
I'm not Jimi Hendrix. But I decided, it was a ceiling that I put on myself. And I was masquerading all these things to be scarier, shadows on the wall than they really were, because the only thing I had riding on all of my ideas of what those things were stories I read in Rolling Stone, were movies that I watched, and all of that was dramatized.
Yeah, it's all Hollywoodized. Yeah,
it's all Hollywood. Like, the record labels are always like these guys in business suits doing these big multi-million-dollar advance deals, 360 deals. Don't sign the wrong one or you get fucked. You could only play a festival if you have like the right manager, and like, hey, it's a tough business, kid. You got to stick with me. And then in my head, I'm like, well, again, who am I to write an album? Like, I'm just some dude that nobody fucking believes in, besides like, not even my girlfriend believed in me. I got my friend, my best friend Sami, like he always believed in me. He didn't understand anything I was doing, but he always believed in me. Dude. I got Sami, man. Like Sami's by my side, man. Like he always was and still is.
When you have like 1 or 2 people, especially in the early days, that really truly ride with you, it's like, those are the people that you're in the early phases, because as you grow a fan base, you're like, okay, now I have fans to do this for. But in the early phases, you're almost doing it for them too. So you're like, I don't want to let that person down. You believe in me so much, I have to prove you right.
There's something about having no fans that actually, in my experience, it was the most liberating thing ever, because I was always afraid of disappointing the fans that I didn't even have. So when I went
no
out
one's really looking at me anyways, who cares? I'm just gonna do whatever. Yeah.
Right. Well, so it came from a place, writing the first album came from a place of, that was the year that I decided that I am going to live as if I'm going to die in a year. Like, and I remember waking up and making that decision. And I said, I'm just going to live life as if I'm going to die in 1 year. And so I invested everything I had into a school bus. And part of that was writing this album. And transparently, when I made that call to my brother on the couch in my studio, I was in a place of like hurting because I was alone. I didn't have many friends, because it's a tough journey to make by yourself if you want to be an entrepreneur. And that's what I was doing. I was building the studio and I was building a client base. And here I am, just like living on a couch in something that I, really believe in, but it hurts, man. It's really fucking lonely sometimes. And I really felt like that. So I was just like, I had to get out of this. And I went to my brother's place and we just chilled. And I made this album specifically as a serum to make me feel better. It was medicine. It was like I would find these sort of bass patches. Like Gravity, for instance, has this very Reese bass patch, and I would hold that patch. I would hold it down, and I would just feel the sound, and I'd literally just meditate on it. That's all I would do. I would just like hear this sound, and I would just hold it because it was the only thing that made me feel whole in a time where like a lot of stuff felt like it was falling apart, like in my family, because I had some stuff going on in my family with like addiction, and so I made this album as a way of like escaping. And I think that's why I chose the Toulambi tribe, because they were such a remote tribe off the face of the earth. I mean, they were from Papua New Guinea. Nobody knew who they were.
I literally only know about them because of that EP that you put out. I don't even really know what they are.
They're an incredible tribe that nobody had contact with. And for some reason, that felt really good to me. I was like, man, I want to be happy on an island where nobody can touch me.
Right. Something that I learned is that I think it was your dad who had alcoholism.
Yeah.
And passed away from that. Being in the music industry and, with temptations and stuff like that, what is your relationship with that? Is that something that has affected you? Have you stayed sober because of that experience? What's that path been like for you personally?
Well, I stopped drinking maybe 4 years ago, close to 4 years ago. And I find it super lightweight. I'm able to navigate really easy in comparison to the way I used to navigate. So when I removed drinking from my life, I just feel like water, man. I could just mold to anything, and I can wake up and hop on a plane with 5 minutes notice, and I never feel like shit the way I used to when I'd wake up hungover. I am more creative than I've ever been.
The hangovers are not fun, dude.
They're not. And, I started realizing around 26, 27 years old that, again, dude, I was chasing this vision that I saw in movies when I was growing up. I'm a movie buff. I went to film school, and growing up, I watched a lot of films. They'd impact me so hard that I wanted to make them because of the way they impacted me in my life. And I formed my understanding of the world through films a lot of the time.
Interesting.
So I was able to form my idea of what the music industry was through films. And unfortunately, those films, like take Almost Famous, for example.
Oh, yeah. I actually just recently saw that.
It's a phenomenal film, but it is fairy tale land.
Have you seen The Dirt, Motley Crue story on Netflix?
Oh man, I watched the first episode and I thought it was so bad, so I stopped watching it.
No, the movie, The Dirt. It's
oh, is it?
Yeah,
is there a
it's
TV
a movie.
series too, or is it just
I don't
the
know
movie?
about the TV series. I was talking about the movie though. I
can't remember.
MGK plays one of the guys, and it's pretty. They show like the drug side, the party side, how they're like. It was pretty accurate to their story, and even like reading the reviews and stuff. Yeah, I highly suggest watching that movie if you want to see something that's like.
I read Nikki Sixx's autobiography, but I never actually saw the movie. I forget why. I remember I think I saw like the first opening scene and I clicked away. But maybe if you're saying that, I'll give it another shot.
I've seen that movie like 3 or 4 times, and I've watched it with other people, like rewatched it with other people, trying to show people that movie. It's very good.
If I'm to put this all in a timeline, the way it happened was I grew up watching films. I decided I want to be a filmmaker and I want to be, like a guitarist in a band, and moved back to New York, joined a band, decided it wasn't for me because the culture wasn't there, got into EDM music. I bought a school bus, turned it into a stage because I was going to
ask you about this later. Yeah.
Sure.
Such a cool aspect of your story.
Well, I did that because I was getting rid of my gatekeeper mentality, right? The sort of people, the people that are looming over us and, holding the carrot over our head. I was like, well, I'm just going to make the stage myself if I'm not going to be put on the stage. And then that led to me going down to Florida to help my old science teacher build a new company. And it was the first time that I saw somebody who is actually very successful in this world. I don't even know how much he's worth, but it's a massive company, has tons and tons of employees. And he gave it all up because he wanted to start something that aligned more with his values.
That's dope.
And his life. So he gave it up and he started another company, and he included me in that process because he respected me as a filmmaker, because that's the way he knew me from high school. That was the first time I saw somebody who I deeply respected build something that was very impressive. And I saw him build this new company. He included me in the process, and I saw how diligent he was, how hardworking he was, how disciplined he was. And I looked at my own life and I went, I'm not even close to this guy. I thought that I was doing it right. And it blows my mind because like when I look back, I was, Justin, this sounds crazy, man, but like, bro, I was literally going out regularly, getting like super drunk, hoping I'd meet the right person that would like hook me up with a record label or record deal. I was going to clubs.
Especially if you're getting plastered, that's not the way you want to approach people when you're trying to network and stuff.
You know, you think in your head, at least I was like, well, you know, like we'll have a bond, we'll have a brotherly bond or like a sister, brother, sister bond. Yeah. You know, like, hey, like we're hanging out, you know? And, I was trying to like build this massive web of connections. And I think I did a decent job, but those connections never led to anything. Like so rarely do they ever lead to anything.
A lot of those people that you think you're making good connections with are also on that same path a lot of the times, and they don't really have their shit figured out like you think they have it figured out too. That's like if they're going out and partying all the time, like most of the time they're not as successful as the people that you really want to be in front of, the people that you really want to meet. A lot of times those type of people aren't going out as much.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that was part of the illusion that I was stuck in. And I didn't realize that I had to run the opposite way in order to actually build success. And when I saw my friend Rob, who didn't use social media, if at all, and he had a family, and he didn't party. If he did, it was specifically because they accomplished something big. And I'm talking like, this guy is the most successful dude I know in my life. And I can't even believe I have the opportunity to be connected with him, let alone him be a friend of mine and somebody that, you know, we can have an actual trusting friendship. And it felt like a great opportunity to have something like that in your life. And he became a mentor. And when I went back home to my school bus, I was sitting there, broke, barely any fan base. I have a dream, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, do I go to the bar tonight and get trashed? Or do I sit here and write music? You know, and I'm like maybe I should just do what Rob's been doing. So I decided to just start doing what Rob did, and I'm just going to actually build the product, the actual product. And that product is the music. That product is the parties that I'm going to throw for people. And who gives a shit what's on my fucking Instagram story? Who gives a shit if I'm wearing the coolest clothes in the coolest picture? You know, all that stuff I just completely threw out, and I just started focusing on the music and on the brand.
It's crazy, that kind of concept, bringing it to just the entrepreneurial world. There is obviously a lot of famous people who have a lot of money, but there's also like, I think there's more billionaires who aren't famous just because they do focus on the craft, they focus on the product, they focus on the business rather than focusing on putting themselves as a famous person. There's like a lot more undercover billionaires than there are like famous billionaires.
Totally. And love him or hate him, Elon Musk having a massive company like Tesla, I think he's a great example because he never put any money into the actual advertising of Tesla. It just was such a great product, people want it.
Well, I did want to get a little bit more into you living on the bus, because I thought that was such a cool thing that you did, because like we were talking about gatekeeping, and you know that was kind of your way of kind of getting around that. you used to travel around with your bus and to different festivals and play afters at campgrounds, right?
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
Totally.
That's
Yeah,
such a cool, like out of left field idea. I've never seen anyone do that, at least in the EDM scene.
Totally. Well, when I think I was 18 or 19, I went to Electric Forest for the first time with my girlfriend, and I saw this school bus in the campground, and I remember she was so enamored with it. She like thought it was the coolest thing, and it looked like there was a bunch of bunk beds in it, and people were just having a good time traveling as a group of friends. And I was like, man, I would love to have a school bus one day and just do that, just live the life of like traveling with your friends. And I kept picturing this vision of like, when I closed my eyes, I could like see myself at a music festival. And maybe it's like my tour bus, and maybe I have a studio in the back of it. And maybe like at that point in my life,
your brain starts, yeah.
You start thinking of all these crazy things. So like maybe I could be making a track with Skrillex, in my school bus in the back, because we just happen to meet up at that festival. And, even though you can afford like a big tour bus, you're not about that life. You want to do it DIY, So I was thinking about like all these fun things. Like, how could you make
the Steve-O route, man?
Right.
Yeah.
How could you make life as fun as you could possibly make it? And so what happened was, over time, I kept it in the back of my head, but I slept over my girlfriend's house. Now a few years have passed. I'm 24 years old, and I still haven't got the music thing off the ground. It's starting to annoy me that I haven't put out an album yet. And we watched the Further documentary, like on the Further bus, the Grateful Dead's bus. And I just thought it was very interesting that it was the acid test that they were bringing around the States. And then they ran into the Warlocks, who were, their former name known as, the Grateful Dead. And it was really cool how the Grateful Dead just hopped on this school bus as a bunch of young kids and just started touring. It ourselves.
Yeah.
They just started playing music. Like nobody gave them permission. They decided that they are the captains of their ship, and they're just going to go.
Punk rock.
It was just fucking awesome, man.
So sick.
They're just going to go and play music. So I just decided, like, I'm on Craigslist every single day trying to get these little film jobs for like, $200, $300. And I still live in my parents' house. I'm 24 years old. I haven't put out a fucking album. I'm like, damn, dude, this is starting to kind of suck. So I'm going to just take my life savings, which was like, I think I had like $4,000, and I'm going to buy a school bus. And I did. And I bought it for $2,800. And then every time I did a little film job, like, filming a corporate event, I'd like, one corporate event would be like, maybe I made $600 or something. I'd be like, ooh, man, I could put a hardwood floor in there now. So I put a hardwood floor in there. The town is giving me tickets constantly because it's not supposed to be parked on the street. I still don't even have a fucking license to drive it. Like it was the most annoying thing to the entire world.
Did you have to have a Class A for that?
You have to have a Class B, I think.
Okay. So Class C wouldn't cut it.
Yeah. You have to have a Class B, and I didn't have it, and I never got it. I drove around for 4 years without it.
Damn.
And, because I was able to find a gray area. I got pulled over by a bunch of state troopers who were also confused because the legislation is so blurry with that kind of stuff. Like, it's not really a school bus anymore, but it has air brakes.
You're not driving kids around. It's just you're driving yourself.
You're driving yourself, right? And it's registered as an RV, which technically you only need a regular license. So it was very confusing. It was a very gray area. And I got around for quite a while. And I actually found one state trooper who pulled me over, and he was extremely knowledgeable. And he actually almost towed my bus. And this was like 2 years into it. And he explained why. Finally, after all this Googling, going on Reddit. At least
you got a correct answer, finally.
I finally got a correct answer. And he told me it was because of this little metal badge that was in the ceiling. He said, if you rip that off with a pair of pliers, I actually can't tow you and I can't give you a ticket.
Got it.
Bro, not even kidding. That's exactly what he did. He ended up one of my friends in front of him, he kind of gave us the wink, like, hey, if that's not there. And so Taylor, she ran into the bus. One of my best friends, she grabbed a pair of pliers, ripped it off right in front of him.
Dang.
Yeah. And then he's just like, all right, have a good day.
Close call.
Yeah, he was pretty chill. Not at first.
That's cool. Yeah.
But he turned out to be very chill.
Oh, you don't have any drugs and you're just driving yourself? Okay, cool. I'll leave you alone.
Yeah, he saw the vision, man. He saw the vision. He knew what we were doing.
What was the hardest part, I guess, but minus, being pulled over and all that stuff? What were some of the challenges that you had to face touring around, making your own way in the way that you did?
Dude, kind of back to sometimes it's a lonely journey, man. It's funny because everybody would see the parties. And when I say everybody, I only had I think at first when I started 300 followers on Instagram and then turned to 1,000 and then it was 3,000. And at that point, my friends were like, bro, you're making it. You have 3,000 followers. And the idea of people see the parties, they see that Pat is DJing these underground, under a bridge somewhere in, some random city that no one's ever been to. A lot of my friends never even left the state of New York. And so when people see that side of it, you start living in this crazy duality where everybody thinks that I have a ton of friends, that I'm playing a lot of shows, that I'm making money. But the reality is that I am on the side of a highway at 2 a.m, drinking a beer, lonely as fuck. And I'm a really optimistic guy, man. I really am. I'm very optimistic.
You have to put yourself in that situation. Holy shit.
Yeah, totally. And I'm not saying this is all the time, but if you're asking what were the hardest times were definitely those nights where for the first time, I'm actually thinking I would look at a family walking into a gas station and some dad has his daughter with him and his wife is making him laugh or something. And I'm thinking,
I want that.
I'm hoping I'm man, am I am I going to ever have that? Because you start thinking in the future, sometimes you can't help it. I'm thinking to myself, am I going down a path that nobody will want me at a certain point because I'm just a guy that lives in a van down by the river? What if this music thing doesn't work?
Where do you end up?
Yeah. What if I turn into a guy that's in his late 30s that's scraping by making $300 a show and still talking about the good old days when he partied in a school bus and what exactly is the mission? What is the vision? So when you ask what are the hardest parts? Those parts can sometimes be the hardest because I always talk about how I've always had a vision, how I could break through brick walls, because I always feel like that a lot of the time. I really do because I wake up early, I hit the gym, I feel strong all the time. But back then, man, I wasn't strong. I was still drinking a lot. I was trying to I had this vision. I didn't know how to do it. All I know is I was a little crazy. I was crazy enough and delusional enough to just say fuck it and just send it. And
everything else in my life has brought me to this point, which I'm okay with. So fuck it, why not? It's going to bring me somewhere. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah,
that's cool. And I know even today you still do pop-up shows. You throw your own shows even now, right? Little small events.
Oh yeah. Oh, I love it, man. Yeah. Again, the culture is it's so important to me that it's as important as the music. I genuinely love these pop-up parties because I get to hang with everybody. Everybody's wearing their own style. Everybody's got their own stories. And I get to cook hamburgers and hot dogs for everybody.
Is this all in Denver? Or you're still living in Denver, right?
Yeah, I'm still in Denver. I've been here for about 3 years now.
Do you throw events only in Denver or do you throw them other places?
Only in Denver for now. And I got this secret hotline. So, I'll text,
kind of almost like a brownies and lemonade thing out in LA. They have a text group thing and they have secret parties where they have pop-up parties where they just text the hotline basically.
Oh, is that what they do?
That's brownies and lemonade.
I didn't even know that. That's crazy. I know they're a big party out there. I didn't know that they did the hotline.
That's how they run it.
That's really fucking cool. That's really cool. Shit. Great minds think alike. Well, it's a concept that like I didn't originate at all. Somebody one night was just like, hey, you should like do a secret hotline. I think some other person's doing it. And I was like,
yeah, well, because you're already doing the bus thing. So it's like, you just get more people there. It makes sense.
right. Yeah. The bus thing was always like I felt like a pirate a lot of the time because you're literally hopping on. Now the whole inside was made of oak and pine. So it feels like a ship. And I'm driving it across the country, which felt like the fucking ocean, to get to a land that I don't know what the land looks like, and I don't know what people are there. I don't even know if people are there. So sometimes, like, we came out to Sonic Bloom. I had never even been to Colorado. And when we got here, all of us, like, we're just straight New Yorkers, man. We like come out to Colorado and it's just like, what the hell is this? Like, there's like huge mountains. Everybody's wearing tie-dye shirts and stuff. And I'm like,
it's a mile high in the air. What's
whoa,
happening? Yeah.
It was the craziest thing. And like, I remember walking around Sonic Bloom and like talking to people. And I remember asking people, what are your favorite artists? Because like, I was so curious as to the culture. And I'm like, what are your favorite artists? What are your favorite artists? Back in New York, Jack U was like the biggest thing at that time. Big Room was still pretty big. And so when I'm out there, everybody's just, Jaws just like hit it massive. And so I'm out here and people are just like, dude, you got to check out, like they're saying some wild ass names of artists that were like so underground, never heard of. I was like, whoa, what is this strange land?
This culture is sick.
Yeah, it was so weird. And I wanted to dive further into it. And I saw this guy play. I don't remember his name, which is terrible because it was one of the best sets I've ever seen. I saw him play at Sonic Bloom. And I remember just thinking like, yo, this is like super wobbly, weird shit. This is so fucking dope. And everybody's just vibing out in front of the stage. And I go back to my school bus. The intention was to play a show, but nobody was in front of the bus. So like, I spent, again, my life savings just getting out there because I always spent my life savings. My bank account hit zero on every single trip I went on. So I'm back at my school bus and now we're just getting drunk. We have like some weird, like flickering rainbow light in the school bus. And it's just me and my friends. And we're just sitting there just like, where are we, dude?
Yeah, Denver's cool. I was out in Denver. I managed a couple artists and one of my guys played in Denver at, where the fuck was it? I can't remember what venue it was, but that was my first time out in Denver, and dude, Denver is cool. And we were there during the winter time too, where it was all snowy. So I want to go back and visit when it's actually good weather.
Well, when you come out, you should hit me up because we definitely hit like Rhino, and there's the amount of venues and shows happening, man, it's crazy.
Yeah, the night that we were there, that we were playing, there was like 4 other clubs that were throwing like rhythm parties. I was like, what? Like, this is unlike anywhere else. Crazy.
Yep, not surprised one bit. Not one bit.
Well, awesome, man. We are getting to time. We're almost at an hour now. I try and keep these around an hour. I want to ask you some wrap-up questions. It's been such a good conversation. One is just what's coming up in the future for you? What are you most excited about for the rest of the year, going into next year? Do you have any, new music coming out, tours, anything like that? Anything that you can talk about, I should say.
Oh, I could talk about pretty much everything. I'm very transparent, but yeah, I'm taking this month to write 2 new EPs.
Wakaan or?
I don't know. I mean, I've been working with Subcarbon recently. I'm a huge fan of Ganja White Night, and
same, man.
I have been since I started this project. So it's like it's a dream to be able to work, directly with them on their record label.
Were you at Lost Lands last week, 2 weeks ago?
No, I was not.
Their set was so good. That was one of my favorite. It was more like a vibey set from them. It was probably my favorite Ganja set I've ever seen. Very good.
Dude, I'm definitely like a big fan of those guys. And it's cooler when you meet somebody that you're like a fan of and they're like super chill and like just very down to earth.
You, man, we're talking to the computer, but like you, I've been a fan of you for a long time. This is a great conversation. So,
dude, I really appreciate that, man. I always feel weird in interviews because I'm like, fuck, like I have to be the one that talks the whole time. I almost want to interview you as well. So sometimes it feels a little one-sided, but I really do appreciate that. And yeah, now I'm talking to Deadbeats too. It's the same thing with Zed's Dead. I've been listening to Zed's Dead since I was in middle school, and those guys are just fucking, they've always killed it. And it's so fun to be able to do that. So yeah, I'm working on those things and just throwing more parties, man. Like I really love throwing these parties. Next summer, I can't talk about it, but next summer we have some really interesting plans for the secret hotline that nobody on the hotline knows at this point, but they're going to be fucking stoked when I announce what we're going to.
How do we get on that hotline? I want to join.
I never actually broadcast the numbers. So that's part of it. You know, part of it is that you got to know someone. You got to know somebody in the circle. Of course I'll send it to you. And if you DM me on Instagram and I catch the DM, I'll also send you the number. But I never put it public on purpose because I want to keep it intimate. I want to keep it, a small group.
Absolutely. Yeah, that totally makes sense. Yeah, don't publish. I was trying to get your name out there, but yeah, if that's how you want to run it, by all means, man, that's a cool idea. Awesome. Well, where can listeners find you and keep up to date with everything you got coming up?
I say my Instagram is probably the best place, which is @Jaenga Music, and going to the Jaenga block, which is the Facebook group. So that's where I announce any secret shows that might be coming up, or if I'm doing like an exclusive, like we're working on a pin drop right now, which is like the raspberry mango like popsicle. We're just going to do like 100 of those. And, we're probably only going to keep it to the Facebook group, maybe a quick Instagram post. We'll see. But awesome. I'd say probably those places.
Sweet. Last final question. I ask this at the end of every single interview to every guest. If there's one piece of advice you could give yourself when you first picked up a DAW and started making music, what would that be?
I'd say that don't believe other people when they tell you how complicated it is to make music, that it's a lot simpler than they're making it out to seem. And I wish I had known that a lot earlier, because you don't have to be a savant. You have to be a person that is a fan of music. If you're a fan of music, you know what sounds good to you. And you don't have to be the most sophisticated engineer. Find some cool sounds, put it together like a puzzle, release it.
Sweet. Awesome, man. Well, it was a pleasure having you on the show today after being, again, such a long-time fan of yours. So hope you have a good rest of your day, dude.
Hey, I appreciate it, Justin. Thanks for having me.